radio network for all America.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Will Evans, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the January 8th, 2026 issue of the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Leading off, Save Scow Before It Gets Swept Over the Falls. The rusty barge had remained perched in the powerful rapids since 1918. The author of a book about the century-old barge in the upper Niagara River above the Horseshoe Falls is calling for it to be saved before it's too late. I don't want to see that thing wash over the falls and just become rubble at the bottom, said Pennsylvania resident Brian Gray, who wrote a 55-page book about the iron scow called Niagara Falls and the Mysterious Barge. He said the remnants of the barge should be brought to dry land and a memorial with the story be enshrined on site. The scow with 2 men aboard broke loose from its towing tug on August 6, 1918. It has stood for more than a century as a powerful symbol of Niagara's history and the fall's natural force. The rusty barge had remained perched in the powerful rapids about 600 meters from the brink of the falls since the dramatic rescue of the 2 men. It shifted significantly in 2019 due to a howling windstorm, which led some people to believe it could finally be swept over the mighty falls. But the scow stayed put. It made national and international headlines, and public interest continued for days after. In 2022, it broke into several pieces. At least 2 large sections of the main hull separated and lay in the churning water. Last November, the scow lodged in the rapids shifted downstream. The scow's bow broke loose and shifted further away from its original resting spot. Gray said he has written to government officials to express his desire to see the structure saved. While there are interpretive panels in the area dedicated to the scow's story, Gray is calling for a Save the Scow or Save the Barge campaign to remove what's left of it from the water and have a more fulsome memorial created. The story of how that scow got to that location just a few hundred yards upstream from certain death is an amazing story of heroism on the part of so many people that day over a century ago, he said. I chronicle all of it in my book. Gray said he's been intrigued by the scow ever since he visited Niagara Falls while in high school. When he first saw the lonely barge sitting precariously near the precipice of the Horseshoe Falls, Gray said he wondered how it got there. He said while he heard of rumors and hearsay, decades later he decided to research the story for himself and found the astounding answers. It took quite a bit of research to get all the stories together, to get all the facts, he said. I found the true story. There was a lot of heroism there. These people need to be remembered. The incident needs to be remembered. The community effort that people came together to rescue those 2 men off that barge and the heroic tale of them going down that river. David Adams, Niagara Parks Chief Executive Officer, said there have been a few inquiries about trying to save the shipwreck. It's in a very challenging location from a safety perspective, he said. In the past, we weren't in a position to move it. Now, it has come apart a bit more because it just continues to deteriorate due to high wind conditions or high water levels or both. We're just not in a position to safely move that, and we're not sure what's left. However, Adams said Niagara Parks plans to continue telling the story of the scow through interpretive panels located on the south side of the Toronto power generating station property where the barge was prior to moving in 2019. The station property is being redeveloped into a 5-star boutique hotel as part of a major new attraction in the city. Our next article carries the headline, Pieces of the Standard Rescued from Fire Wreckage. Historic remnants of the former St. Catherine Standard building have been given to descendants of the original Burgoyne family newspaper owners for safekeeping after being rescued from the fire-ravaged demolition site. Councilman Matt Harris said he took the 3 long decorative signs that were above the main doorways at 17 Queen Street, which included the words "The Standard" in calligraphy with the D's reversed to read "The Stand Barb," along with the numbers 17 and 21. It literally was being torn down. So I'm like, I'll grab it and I'll give it to the family. So I jammed them in my car, Harris said, adding they were long and he was helped by members of the demolition crew. I figured if I don't grab them, somebody's going to grab them and scrap them. The signs appeared to be carved in stone, but Harris said they were actually metal, and he was concerned they would be taken and melted down. He delivered them to the Burgoyne family, who owned and ran the newspaper for 104 years, until 1996, as well as a city plaque from November 1991 affixed to the side of the brick building to recognize the paper's 100th year of publishing. They've done so many wonderful things for the city of St. Catharines and were instrumental in the growth and development of St. Catharines and served the community and employed thousands and thousands of people over the years, he said. I think it's probably appropriate that they got some of the history back. Stone medallions on the exterior of the William Street Press Room, built in the 1920s, bearing the initials WB and HB for founder William Burgoyne, who died in 1921, and then publisher Henry Burgoyne, who died in 1950, were also saved and given to the Burgoyne family at their request by Mayor Matt Cisco's office. Peter Partridge, Jr., the great-great-grandson of William Burgoyne, said the family will keep all the items at their homes, but if the St. Catharines Museum wants something, they are open to it. It was very nice of the city and Matt and Fire Chief Dave Upper and Matt Cisco to help preserve some of the old history of the building and the Standard, which for 4 generations, I would have been the 5th, was part of the fabric of the community. Partridge said it was sad to see the building destroyed by fire on December 5th, much like the Welland House or any other former institutions downtown or in the region that are lost. Obviously, it was such a big part of the community for so long. The building, which employed so many people and was a big function of downtown, was coming to an end. And even though the family sold in '96, and then the building's been empty since 2013, it's always sad that somebody couldn't do something with it. I guess something will be done now, but the building is now nothing. Another remnant from the building, a historic long black sign on the William Street Press Room building that said the St. Catharines Standard Limited, was taken to the museum by firefighters in December. Curator Kathleen Powell said earlier this week the sign was completely soaked through and has been drying out at the museum, where its condition will be assessed before it is determined what to do with it. It's not in very good shape, which is unfortunate. It spent a lot of time sitting outside just being weathered, but then on top of that, the fire probably didn't do it any service, she said. She said the sign has a wood base, but has a tin or aluminum covering with words painted on top of the metal, which is likely why it survived for decades. The Standard was owned by the Burgoyne family from 1892 to 1996, at which point the newspaper was sold to Southam Inc. It has had various owners since that time. The newspaper's offices remained at the 0.7-hectare Queen Street property from 1898 to 2013, when the building was sold and was never occupied again. It was vacant when a blaze tore through it last month. A cause was never determined due to the amount of damage. Another fire at the building and the adjacent former La Scala Ristorante at 9 Queen Street on December 26th and 27th is being investigated as suspicious. The fire chief said this week investigators from St. Catharines Fire Services and Niagara Regional Police are continuing to go through evidence they've collected at the site, as well as photos and video footage, and will likely be at it for the next couple of weeks. Moving to our next article now, everybody and their moms have guns. Defense says Toronto rapper wasn't shooter in Fort Erie killings. The man who was the guest of honor at a house party held at a short-term rental in Fort Erie, where 2 young women were shot and killed, returned to the witness stand at a double murder trial, but this time as a witness for the defense. Trevor Barnett, a 33-year-old resident of Scarborough, had previously testified at the trial of Christopher Lucas, who is charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder. Barnett said both Christine Crooks, 18, of Toronto, and Juliana Panuzio, 20, of Windsor, were alive when he left his birthday party at a Fort Erie Airbnb on January 19, 2021. He admitted he deactivated his cell phone, took steps to return a rental vehicle he had driven to the party, and instructed other attendees on what to say to police. He also got rid of a handgun he had in his possession at the time. Last month, 7 weeks into the trial, the Center of Forensic Sciences concluded cartridge casings from a handgun seized during a traffic stop in East Gwillimbury in August 2022 matched casings recovered from the Fort Erie murder scene. The .40 caliber Glock had sat in a York Regional Police evidence lockup for more than 3 years before being examined. The man arrested in connection with the traffic stop is an associate of both Barnett and Lucas. In the Superior Court of Justice in Welland on Wednesday, the first day of the defense's case, lawyer John Fitzmaurice told the jury the defense typically gives a preview of evidence it intends to call. Regretfully, we can't. This is not the usual case. The Glock firearm came to the evidentiary horizon in December of this year, 2025. The Crown's theory is Lucas pulled the trigger at the large gathering to celebrate Barnett's 29th birthday. Our position is Trevor Barnett is the shooter, Fitzmaurice told a 6-man, 6-woman jury. Barnett was originally charged with 2 counts of murder in relation to the homicides. Those charges were dropped following a preliminary hearing after a judge ruled there was not enough evidence to prove he was a party to the murders. In October 2024, he was sentenced to time served, followed by probation for 2 years after he pleaded guilty to a charge of obstruction of justice. On Wednesday, Barnett testified that many people he associates with carry firearms. Coming from where I'm from, it's normal to protect yourself, he said. You could be here today and gone tomorrow. Everybody and their moms have guns. He said it is relatively easy to obtain firearms in Toronto, and that the weapons are often rotated throughout the community. Handguns are regularly traded for other firearms or lent out to other individuals. He said he did have a handgun at the time of the shooting, but he did not bring it to the house party because Fort Erie is so far away. He could not recall what type of gun it was. After the shooting, he got rid of the gun because he knew police would be interested in everyone who was at the waterfront home that night. He said he passed on his gun to someone in the neighborhood, but refused to name the recipient. He told court he has had 20 to 25 firearms over the years, and that he and his associates prefer Glock handguns. People want to roll with what the police have, go for the best. We went through everything before we got Glock money. Asked if his gun was used in the double homicide, Barnett said, "I don't know what gun was used to murder those women." Barnett has previously weapons-related convictions and is the subject of 2 lifetime firearm bans. Court heard Crooks had been invited to the party by Lucas, then a 22-year-old Toronto rapper known by the stage name El Plaga. Panunzio's only connection to the gathering was through Crooks. The jury previously heard from several people who attended the house party at the rental property on Niagara Parkway. None of the partygoers said they witnessed the shooting, and no one could identify the shooter. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Next up, getting homes back to families. Canada needs more rental housing, but it also needs to get existing homes out of the hands of investors and back into the hands of families. The federal government can achieve both simultaneously by fulfilling one of its key campaign promises, with a twist. Many Canadians are angry about the state of Canada's housing market, with a recent Abacus poll finding 56% of Canadians say housing should be a top 3 priority for the federal government. Yet only 28% that is, believe Ottawa is on track to meet its housing goals. Many potential homebuyers feel they cannot compete with investors who have been increasing their share of the resale market. The federal government is taking some steps to address Canada's housing crisis. There are programs designed to build new supply, preserve existing affordable supply, and reduce demand. But one potentially powerful approach is missing from this suite of programs: incentivizing investors to move their capital to more productive uses. The government has a tremendous opportunity to unlock housing investor capital to build much-needed rental units while freeing up existing housing stock for families. During the election campaign, the Liberals had promised to reintroduce the Multi-Unit Residential Building, or MURB, tax provision, a 1970s-era policy that incentivized smaller-scale investors to fund the construction of low- and mid-rise rental apartments and townhome complexes by allowing them to offset their taxes. Part of the genius of the MURB program is that it diverts investors away from buying up existing units and toward funding new construction. In recent years, mom and pop investors have bought up large quantities of family-sized homes due to rising rental demand and investor recognition that home prices were increasing faster than other asset classes. Between 2016 and 2021, the number of single, detached, semi-detached, and townhomes in Canada owned by investors and rented out increased by 167,000. This represents 167,000 fewer opportunities for families to achieve the dream of home ownership. Introducing MURB will help unleash a wave of rental construction, including fourplexes, sixplexes, and stacked townhomes, which the federal government is encouraging through programs such as the CMHC Housing Design Catalog. This would simultaneously create the rental housing needed to support a growing population while reducing the incentive to buy existing homes and rent them out. But it is likely not enough to bring back into the ownership market some of the nearly 1.3 million ground-oriented homes owned by investors. And given that rent growth is flat in much of the country, the initial uptake of the MURB program could be slow. A new MURB should include an incentive for investors to sell existing rental units back into the ownership market, deferring capital gains taxes on the sale proceeds if the proceeds are reinvested in a MURB-eligible rental construction project. The provision to sell existing units should be time-limited, ending in, say, 2030, which would prioritize speed to meet the urgency of the crisis. This kind of approach has been used elsewhere, most famously in the United States, where the 1031 exchange successfully incentivizes new investment in rental construction. Canada has a big problem: the lack of access to suitable housing at affordable prices for young families has cascading impacts across the economy and acts as a drag on growth and productivity. Younger generations feel both despair and anger toward both governments and investors who are pricing them out of ownership. Many programs focus on building more housing, preserving existing housing, and reducing demand. But they aren't enough because they miss the role mom and pop investors have in shifting existing housing away from families. Implementing MERB with a time-limited provision to sell existing homes would address two critical Canadian priorities: more capital for purpose-built rental and more supply of existing homes for young families. There's no silver bullet in housing policy, but as the government attempts to cobble together different programs into a complete plan, this idea can fill an important gap. Heading to our next article now, how to tackle the teacher shortage. Education Minister Paul Calandra is considering a major change to teacher training. This could reverse a huge mistake made a decade ago. Until 2015, the teacher education program was only 1 year in length. Partly to deal with the surplus of certified teachers, the then Liberal government doubled the program to 2 years, which education faculties happily accommodated by adding more educational theory courses. Shortly afterwards, admission rates to teacher education programs dropped by nearly 1/3. Now, Ontario faces a teacher shortage. Earlier this year, Calandra mused about reverting to a 1-year teacher education program. Now he's going even further by suggesting teacher education programs must be more practical, which would mean requiring prospective teachers to gain more experience in the classroom instead of taking questionable educational theory courses. Indeed, Ontario universities offer a plethora of education courses with debatable value that focus more on promoting political activism than practical classroom teaching. For example, York University offers courses such as Educating for Activism, The Politics of Social Activism, and Pedagogy of the Land. These types of courses are wholly disconnected from the daily realities of what teachers do in school. Most teachers are far more interested in learning about effective classroom management and accurate student assessments than in using their positions to turn students into political activists. If the Ontario government wants to significantly reform teacher education, it should immediately cut the 2-year education program to 1 year and increase the minimum number of required practicum days from 80 days to 100 days. This would lead to 3 immediate improvements to teacher training. First, prospective teachers would get more practical experience in the classroom, which will help them become more effective teachers in the future. When it comes to learning how to teach effectively, there's no substitute for being in a classroom with real students. Second, prospective teachers would not be required to take nearly as many educational theory courses. One of the worst-kept secrets among teachers is that educational theory courses are worse than useless. If anyone thinks these courses are useful, they're welcome to sign up for them in their graduate programs. Finally, shortening the teacher education program would help address the teacher shortage. Not only would this lead to prospective teachers graduating more quickly, but it would also incentivize people in other professions to think about becoming teachers. A shorter education program would be an excellent way of attracting more qualified professionals into education. Of course, if Calandra is feeling particularly bold, he should also consider dispensing with the requirement for a Bachelor of Education degree entirely. As long as prospective teachers complete an undergraduate degree with the appropriate subject requirements, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to start teaching right away under the mentorship of experienced teachers. After all, there are plenty of people with impressive academic credentials who have the potential to be excellent classroom teachers. Instead of forcing them to take a bunch of dubious educational theory courses, they should have access to practicums so they can get the practical experience they need as quickly as possible. Calandra has a genuine opportunity to change Ontario's education system for the better. Hopefully, he seizes that opportunity. Our next article is written by William Thomas. William Thomas is a Niagara-based humor columnist whose work appears in the Niagara Dailies. He can be reached at williamthomas@gmail.com. It was a weird year for critters. leopards in Mumbai, wolves in Berlin. Coyotes are as common a sight in Toronto as are dingoes in the cities of Australia. The year 2025 was a very strange one for animals. In British Columbia, the unnatural animal capital of Canada, a fish started a grass fire. It seems a salmon and a bullfrog were playing with matches, and no, apparently an osprey dropped a large fish from the sky, which hit a hydro line, causing sparks to fall into a field of dry grass beside the town of Ashcroft. Nearby ranch hands were treated to a nicely seared coho salmon, while the osprey was charged with mischief in absentia. The sad killing of more than 300 ostriches at their Edgewood, BC farm involved devastated owners, avian flu, a team of professional marksmen, and American Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr., who offered to move the infected birds to the United States. Wow! Who do we root for in this one? Before the final cull, the case of the 300 sentenced to death ostriches went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, where, in fairness, most of them appeared as cooperative witnesses, but they still made a hell of a mess in the lobby. Off the BC coast, scientists using an underwater drone captured an amazing symbiotic relationship between dolphins and whales. The dolphins herd schools of salmon were upward where the orcas chomp on the fish, but intentionally leave chunks for the dolphins to eat. This extraordinary cooperation brings new insights into the intelligence of marine mammals, but begs the question, how smart are our East Coast fishermen who've been involved in the lobster war for more than 25 years? Maybe both the local and indigenous fishermen should attend the Dolphin/Orca School of Marine Collaboration. The Tiergarten Nuremberg Zoo in southern Germany killed 12 healthy baboons due to overcrowding of their enclosures. Let's hope this policy doesn't spread to the country's prison system. Described as a shell-shocking heist in the Champagne region of France, somebody stole 350,000 snails. The vast majority of the snails went quietly at gunpoint, but a few brave ones apparently made a run for it. Although no one has been arrested, Interpol has received tips about a large theft of garlic in Germany and $8,000 worth of butter in Waterloo, Ontario. They believe an intentional or international ring of gourmet diners may be involved. 2 female gorillas at Toronto Zoo were injured while being introduced to the new male silverback named Zwalani. So that's how they refer to sex in Toronto Zoo these days, introduction. Toronto's project to drastically reduce its pigeon population by feeding them grain laced with the contraceptive ovo control was a complete bust. Plan B, having city workers insert teeny-weeny diaphragms in ovulating female pigeons, looks even less promising. And finally, a rich and famous Dallas Ranch realtor was gored and killed by a water buffalo while on a big game safari in South Africa. A rep from the safari company described the attack as sudden and unprovoked. Dressed like Marlon Perkins on Wild Kingdom and carrying a high-powered rifle, hell, even the water buffalo knew the guy was going to kill him. Unprovoked? Strange, but once in a while, the prey become the hunter. Moving on now. Unknown future of governance affecting re-election plans. In Niagara Falls, most councilors are undecided. The majority of Niagara Falls city councilors are taking a wait-and-see approach before deciding whether to seek re-election in October. Out of the 8 members interviewed by the Niagara Falls Review, only 2 said they have decided to seek another term, Lori Lococo and Ruth Ann Newswestig. The rest are undecided, with some saying they're waiting to see if the province makes any governance changes that could impact the way Niagara municipalities operate. The Doug Ford government has been hinting at major changes for 2026's municipal elections. The Premier has floated the idea of getting rid of elected education trustees. There are also hints of big change at the regional level. In November, rumors of reform started circulating, including elimination of directly elected regional councilors, this idea going along with the direct provincial appointment of regional chairs. Instead, mayors would be the only elected members of regional councils, with vote power distributed based on population. It has made some observers wonder whether the province could also change the way Niagara's 12 lower-tier municipalities are governed. I keep hearing the rumors that changes are inevitable and that they're going to happen before the next election, said Councillor Victor Pietrangelo, who has sat on Niagara Falls City Council for more than 30 years. I'd like to see what the political structure is going to be and just, I guess, assess what I'm doing. I know the runway is getting shorter, like in terms of the election coming up, but I don't know if that really is a major factor if you take a look at changes that happened before. The nomination and campaign period for the 2026 municipal election opens on May 1st. Elections are on October 26th. Councilman Mike Strange said the uncertainty about the future governance in the region leaves him up in the air about seeking re-election. I'm still enjoying it, he said of being a councilor. We're doing a lot of good stuff and Niagara Falls is looking good. But I want to see what that governance kind of looks like before I decide. Councillor Tony Baldinelli said he hasn't put much thought into whether he will seek re-election, also pointing to potential governance changes. Councilman Mona Patel said she's focused on the work I have ahead, and seeking re-election is not on top of my mind right now. I have introduced quite a few motions, and I want to see them through, she said. The Destination Niagara announcement, as an airport commissioner, I think we have our work cut out for us because in the last 2 years, we worked very hard to build our business plan and strategic plan, and we created a relationship with the province. And now they're on board, and now we're working with the federal government. I'm already working with a few of the key partners for certain other priorities that I want to introduce in the upcoming year, so I really haven't thought of the election. The province, during its Destination Niagara announcement in Niagara Falls last month, said a request for proposals had been made to improve air access at Niagara District Airport, including adding 914 meters to the runway to attract larger international planes. The airport is in Niagara-on-the-Lake and is owned by the town, along with the cities of Niagara Falls and St. Catharines. Chris Dabrowski and Vince Cario, the two councilors appointed to fill vacancies this term, both said they have yet to decide whether to run in October's municipal election. Newsweestig said she will seek re-election, adding she's learned a lot in her first term and wants to build on that during a second term. There's a lot of learning that goes into the first term, and it would be a shame to stop after the first term because it's taken time to gain all that experience, she said. Every year, I find that I'm able to do more because you have more depth of understanding of what needs to be done. I think it's an exciting time right now. There are so many things happening in Niagara Falls that you want to be part of, and just to keep going and continue to serve. Lococo said she will seek a third term this fall. I feel that I bring a voice to many residents that don't feel that their voice is being heard, and they have different perspectives and would like a voice at the table, she said. I know there's a lot of tourism discussions and announcements out there. I think we really need to take a hard look at what our residents want and where the growth is going to be happening. Jim Diodati has already said he will seek a fifth term as mayor, noting his desire to finish what was started when he was first elected mayor in 2010. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Our next article is written by Lizzie Tesher, who is an advice columnist for The Star and based in Toronto. Mean, ungrateful sister should see a doctor. I hate my sister. She treats our parents badly and gets away with it. She's mean and rude and disrespectful to them. She wakes up in the morning in a bad mood. She refuses to eat breakfast and yells back when our parents are trying to hurry us out the door for school. When she comes home from school, she goes straight to her room without even speaking to our parents. And then she yells when they ask her to come to the table. When she finally comes down, she complains about the food, is rude to whoever cooked, both my parents cook, and a fight ensues whenever she is asked to clean up. I can see my parents don't know what to do. How can I help them? My siblings hate the constant fighting. That's from Disrespectful Sister. That doesn't sound like a fun house to live in. On the one hand, I would suggest your parents just leave on time to get you and your siblings to school, and so they can get to their jobs. If your sister misses her ride to school, that's her problem, and maybe she'll learn a lesson. I'm not sure if that's doable. If she doesn't like dinner, your parents can take her plate away and send her back upstairs while you all eat in peace. She won't starve herself, so she'll eventually eat. But I think there's more going on with your sister than meets the eye. Have your parents had her assessed for any mental health disorders, even those stemming from learning disabilities? For example, often those who are diagnosed with ADHD also suffer from low self-esteem, lack of confidence, a buildup of shame, and other issues that can affect their behavior and moods. It would probably be beneficial for your sister to seek professional help to figure out just what is going on with her. In the meantime, you and your other siblings need to be kind, warm, respectful, and loving to your parents. I realize friendships often have a shelf life, but I didn't expect a decades-old friendship to come to an end this year. I've always known my high school pal is very devoted to her church. I'm a Buddhist, and this has never been a source of contention. We've seen each other through the loss of parents, difficult jobs, and major life transitions. Since the death of a certain right-wing pundit back in September, I've noticed her social media posts becoming increasingly extremist. I texted her to address the difference between Christian nationalism and the gospel she honors. No reply. I communicated with her again a few short weeks ago to ask if she wanted to join me in a food security initiative we have both supported. No reply. No reply is the answer I didn't want, but here we are. Is there any hope for someone who has gone down the rabbit hole of dark, intolerant, and hateful thinking, mourning a friendship? And here's the response from Lisi. Without heading into a political debate, I can only remark that extremism in any form is unhealthy and often doesn't end well. We all have our personal beliefs, whether it be politics, religion, parenting, even nutrition, diet, and exercise. What works for you may not work for me, and vice versa. The key to a peaceful existence is tolerance. If you think weightlifting and veganism is the way to go, have at it. I'll eat all your fish and dairy and run, bike, and swim outdoors. There's no room on this planet for hateful thinking or intolerance. Unless you want to bang your head against the wall, I'd walk away. Sorry for your loss. Here's some feedback regarding the caffeine-free issue from October 14th. From the reader, using a drug so you can fast without feeling bad? Isn't it the point of religious fasting to experience a degree of discomfort, either as a sacrifice, a discipline, or a reminder of the suffering of those forced to go without food because of poverty, famine, or illness? Is this medication considered acceptable because it's not by mouth? What sophistry! Lisi, regardless of its acceptability around fasting, giving them out is illegal since they're prescription meds. The headline for our next article, Should Canada's Oil Sector Fear a Venezuelan Boom? Despite stock market tumble, experts say any impact should be minimal. Fears that Venezuela's oil resurgence could intensify competition with Canada are mounting, but some energy experts are brushing aside concerns that it will seriously threaten Canada's bulk oil supply to the U.S. Heavy crude pumped from Venezuela's fields, similar to Alberta's heavy bitumen, is now in the spotlight after the American military captured Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro in an audacious raid, and the U.S. President Donald Trump vowed to revive the country's oil industry. Shares of Canada's top oil sands companies and the TSX Energy Subindex tumbled on Monday in response to worries that Venezuela's heavy crude could flood U.S. Gulf Coast refineries and edge out Canadian producers. Rory Johnston, a Toronto-based oil market researcher, said he is not worried that Venezuela will replace Canada's dominant role in providing oil to the U.S. because the bulk of Canadian oil, about 2.5 million barrels a day, is shipped by pipeline from Alberta to landlocked refineries in the U.S. Midwest. Those pipelines travel south only, giving Canada a strong foothold in the inland markets, making it hard for Venezuelan barrels to reach them, he said. I don't think this is a major near-term issue for Canadian oil companies and their investors, particularly not to the scale of sell-offs that we saw in Canadian equity prices, Johnston said. The dense, sour crude from Venezuela was a natural fit for Gulf Coast refineries, which had been designed to process heavy oil for decades before the Trump administration imposed sweeping sanctions on Venezuela's state-owned oil exports in 2017. But Johnston said that while increased Venezuelan production could boost competition in the Gulf Coast, that region represents a small market for Canada. The less than 400,000 barrels a day shipped to the Gulf Coast account for only a small portion of the roughly 4 million barrels a day Canada sends to the U.S. overall. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Mark Carney downplayed the threat from rising Venezuelan oil production during a press conference in Paris, arguing that Canadian crude remains cheaper, cleaner, and a safer bet for buyers. Canadian oil will be competitive because it is low risk, clearly low risk, low cost, the marginal costs, there's been huge progress on getting down the costs, and low carbon, which is what the Pathways Project carbon capture will bring, Carney said. Alberta and Ottawa officials committed in November to moving forward with the Pathways Project, proposed by a group of major Canadian oil sands companies to capture carbon from oil sands at facilities and achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Heather Exner-Pirot, Director of Energy, Natural Resources, and Environment with think tank Macdonald-Laurier Institute, said she is not convinced Venezuela will be the main competitor with Canada at the Gulf Coast. The South American country would need significant upfront investment and at least 5 to 10 years to lift oil production from about 800,000 barrels a day currently to between 2 and 3 million barrels a day, its peak level in the 1990s, both Exner-Pirot and Johnston noted. And we'll turn to sports now. Rangers trade Chromiak, trim their overage contingent. The Kitchener Rangers have solved their glut of overage players. The Ontario Hockey League team traded Slovakian defender Jakub Chromiak on Tuesday afternoon to the Niagara Ice Dogs for second and third round draft picks. OHL clubs can carry 3 20-year-old players, and the Rangers had 4 when former captain Matthew Andonovski was returned to Kitchener last week after beginning the season with the Ottawa Senators' American Hockey League affiliate in Belleville. That put the Rangers in a pickle with 4 overage players in Andonovski, Chromiak, and forwards Dylan Edwards and Jack Pridham. The deadline to trade or release overage players is Thursday at noon. This is an extremely tough decision and one of the hardest I have ever had to make, said Rangers general manager Mike McKenzie in a news release. Jacob is one of the best kids we have had here and the ultimate professional and team guy. We will miss him immensely and wish him the best of luck in Niagara. This will be Chromiak's 4th OHL team after stints with the Sudbury Wolves and Kingston Frontenacs. The Rangers acquired the 20-year-old from Kingston at the beginning of last season. He had 55 points in 92 regular season games and was a stalwart on the blue line in last season's playoffs. His hard-nosed play and dedication to the team made him a favorite in the dressing room and among the coaching staff. But his fate seemed decided when Andonovski returned. It was unlikely that Chromiak would unseat Andonovski or displace Pridham, who is tied for third in the OHL in goal scoring, or Edwards, a winger the team acquired via trade just before Christmas. The two high draft picks from Niagara are a nice return for the Rangers and will likely be used to acquire ringers ahead of the OHL's trade deadline Friday at noon. Chromiak is a nice addition for the Ice Dogs and will provide a calming veteran presence on the blue line. Niagara is young, and at 18-15-31 is in 6th place in the Eastern Conference. And we'd like to remind you that you're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Continuing in sports, Matthews thrilled to see Sundin. Former Leafs scoring leader flew in to recognize new record holder. The fact that Mats Sundin flew from Sweden to Toronto to help honor Auston Matthews' accomplishment of becoming the Maple Leafs franchise leader in goals scored tugged on the current captain's heartstrings. Matthews passed the former captain with 2 goals on the road against the New York Islanders on Saturday, and added another with Sundin watching live in the Maple Leafs' 4-1 win against the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers at Scotiabank Arena on Tuesday. Sundin was part of a pregame ceremony to honor Matthews, moments after the recent passing of 4-time Stanley Cup champion with the Maple Leafs, 89-year-old Bob Pulford, who was acknowledged with a scoreboard tribute. "All of it means a lot," the 28-year-old Matthews said. "It's special to wear this jersey. It's an absolute honor. And you know, to have Mats come in, to have so many players before us that have paved the way and worn this jersey is very special, and I'm very appreciative." The Hockey Hall of Famer Sundin scored 420 goals in 981 games with Toronto, while Matthews managed his 422 in his 665th outing. "I thought it would take a few more years, but he's a great goal scorer," Sundin said with a smile. Kidding aside, records are made to be broken, and what a treat for the Maple Leafs fan base to have a superstar like Auston, one of the league's absolute premier players and an even better person. He's a great leader. The way he handles the hardest hockey market in Toronto, representing the Maple Leafs, he does it with grace, and I'm very glad for him. Toronto fourth-line center Scott Laughton, who played 3 minutes, 10 seconds of the final 4 minutes and 2 seconds in the Maple Leafs' latest victory, grew up a Toronto fan. He always enjoys meeting alumni like Sundin. "It's cool seeing them on the ice and being around," Laughton said. "You see the guys around like Darcy Tucker? That's what it's all about. That's what makes the organization what it is. And it's special." Beating the champs. This was the Panthers' first trip back to Toronto since they demolished the Maple Leafs 6-1 in Game 7 of the second round of playoffs on May 18th. The Maple Leafs have claimed both meetings this season. "You create rivals against these teams, playing them in the playoffs last year," Toronto head coach Craig Berube said. "Similar to when the Ottawa Senators came in here on December 27th. Those games are intense, and they're going to be intense. We know that when you play Florida, you've got to match their physicality. You know how they're coming at you all night, right? That's the way they play." Toronto or Florida? Super pest Brad Marchand did not play in the third period. He was kept out for precautionary reasons, although he appeared to be walking around with no difficulty after the game. He revealed earlier in the day that he considered signing as a free agent with the Maple Leafs last summer. "It was between Florida and Toronto where I was going to go. I never thought it was going to be possible to re-sign with Florida. I really didn't." Moving on now, Tiger Cats Rough Riders earned top grades. The Hamilton Tiger Cats, among the CFL's top teams last season, have earned the distinction of being its best franchise off the field. Hamilton, which finished atop the East Division in 2025, received 5 A's and 5 B's in the CFL Players Association's second annual team report cards, which were released Wednesday. The top grades came in football operations, facilities/equipment, strength and conditioning, team travel, and training camp, while B's were for coaching staff, ownership/business operations, therapy/medical staff, nutrition/diet, and treatment of families. My club ranked highly last year and still elected to make improvements, a player remarked anonymously about the Ticats. This club is the class of the CFL and goes beyond the call of duty. They even hosted Thanksgiving dinner for the players and their families. The Grey Cup champion Saskatchewan Roughriders also earned 5 A's, coaching staff, football operations, strength and conditioning, team travel, and training camp. They received B's for all but treatment of families, securing a C, while also earning criticism for community appearances. Only 2 F's were given, to the BC Lions for nutrition/diet, and Montreal Alouettes for treatment of family. The CFLPA is following in the footsteps of the NFL Players Association, which released its first team report cards in 2023. And now let's take a look at the astrology column. The midweek slump may finally arrive today. While there might be work to do and tasks to complete, many of us may not feel very motivated to get any of it done. As such, we may need to be mindful of being too critical of ourselves or others, since the vibe for today will feel noticeably low. Friday's forecast will provide a better opportunity to forge ahead with goals and plans. Meanwhile, the evening bodes well for leisure and socializing. Aries, when it comes to how much you may be able to accomplish today, manage your expectations. Taurus, your social battery may be extremely low. An enjoyable solo activity may help to recharge you. Gemini, you're in dire need of a break. Make sure that you take one today. Cancer, avoid setting plans in stone right now. Give yourself room to make changes or change your mind. Leo, adopting a more flexible way of doing things will help you to better handle whatever gets tossed your way. Virgo, it may be helpful to give some people a wide berth today so that their mood or energy doesn't affect yours. Libra, not every problem is yours alone to fix. Don't try to be a superhero. It will only burn you out. Scorpio, you could use some levity in your life. Connect with friends for some lighthearted fun. Sagittarius, you may not be able to change the past, but you can choose to do things differently in the present. Capricorn, beware of focusing on what could go wrong. Have a little faith that things can go right. Aquarius, what might have worked in the past isn't going to work now. You need a fresh approach. Pisces, if you're feeling stuck, talking to the right person could help you find a path forward. And for today's birthday, your grit and intelligence enable you to weather the toughest storms. Because of these experiences, you appreciate relationships that are deeper than surface-level connections. However, because of your strength, you often attract unreliable people. Most folks know that they can count on you, which is why it's important for you to build connections with people you can rely on as well. This year, you're encouraged to adopt new ways of thinking, as well as a new approach to life. The birth date today, Cynthia Erivo, actor/singer, Noah Cyrus, singer-songwriter, Sarah Polly, filmmaker and writer. Our final article for today's has the title, Community Rallies After Boy Killed in Dog Attack. Conway Hutt says he didn't know the boy who died in his community after a weekend dog attack, but when he heard about the tragedy, he knew there was a family who needed support. The Southwest Nova Scotia scallop fisher put together a fundraising raffle in support of the boy's family, some of whom he does know. He put up 10 pounds of scallops, which another fisher quickly matched with 10 pounds of lobster. By Tuesday evening, dozens of items had been donated, including hundreds of dollars in gift cards, hand-crocheted blankets, and drone photography services. As of about 8 o'clock Tuesday night, we hit like 80 different items, Hutt said in an interview Wednesday. So at that point, that was way more than we ever expected. So I just stopped taking donations at that point and just asked them to make money contributions or buy tickets. Local officials have said the boy was a 13-year-old grade 8 student in Shelbourne, Nova Scotia, a tiny fishing community about 200 kilometers southwest of Halifax, where there's been an outpouring of grief on social media. RCMP have said he was biking by a property in the 100 block of Upper Sandy Cove Road, a gravel road just north of the town in a community called Welshtown, on Saturday evening when 3 large breed dogs attacked. He was flown to a hospital in Halifax with life-threatening injuries and later died. On Wednesday, the RCMP said the dogs that attacked the boy were 2 cane corsos and a Rottweiler. All 3 have been euthanized. Since the attack, investigators have been going door to door, talking to people and looking at video footage to track the dogs' day-to-day movements, they said. An online statement from the boy's family thanked the community for the overwhelming fundraising support, noting the boy's grandparents' plan to pay for the funeral. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the January 8th, 2026 issue of the Niagara Falls Review. We read from the Niagara Falls Review every Sunday at 11 p.m. Your reader has been Will Evans. Thank you for listening.